So one day, I was working on a music project when I suddenly got a Discord message from a person named Anatase. They said, Hi, I saw your post on another server and wanted to reach out. I was wondering if you felt comfortable with creating something reminiscent of like 90s anime and or Japanese Citypop. Now, as a self-employed musician who takes every commission that comes through, I said, yeah, I could do that. And after having a discussion with them, Anatase said that they wanted an intro theme to use for their YouTube videos, but they wanted to have the option to loop it for their streams as well. They were looking to have a 30-second intro. So to help get the correct vibe of what we're going for here, I asked them to send me a few reference tracks for me to listen to. Anna sent me 3 reference tracks, them being Fly Day Chinatown by Yasuha, Ranma Half OVA Opening, and Makenai from Sailor Moon. Now that we have all the information we need, let's make a Citypop theme song. We're going to take this melody and transform it into this. Now, for those who don't know me, hi, my name is John. I also go by Elementality Studios, and I've been a musician for about 20 years, and I've been music producing for about 10 years. My specialty is using something that I call the letters to notes methodology, where I repeat the alphabet across the musical notes A through G. I can take the name of Anatase, spell it out on the piano, and turn it into a melody. So this is what Anatase sounds like. This methodology is a good way for me to spark ideas to create melodies, and I especially love to utilize this methodology to create theme songs for content creators and using their name as the main motif. But by playing these notes in a straight 8th note rhythm as they are, not only seems boring, but it doesn't really fit the vibe that we're going for here. This is where the black keys on the piano come in handy. We can use them to manipulate the notes and make them sound closer to what we're going for. While the original notes seem to map out an A minor scale, let's instead change it to be an A major scale. In this case, the G will become a G sharp, and the F will become an F sharp. Here's what we have. This is already sounding pretty good, but before we get into the full theme song, I want to look at one more thing in this melody, and that would be the 2 repeating E notes at the very end. We can either keep it the way it is, or we can choose to change the octaves to give it more variety. This is really up to the interpretation of myself as well as my client Anna to see if they like it or not. So I decided to change just the last note to go an octave up, and this is what it sounds like. Now to add the finishing touches, I wanted to use a 2-4-5 chord progression here. I also wanted the melody to start on the and of 1, and this is what the Anatase motif sounds like. This is turning out pretty good so far, but now we're going to dive deep into the song here. Alright, so here's the entire project. I've got the entire song here, and I'm just going to talk about the process of how I made this song, show you all the different layers and my thought processes behind maybe some of the chord progressions and what instruments I chose. So let's dive into it. So to start, here is the Anatase motif with the piano, but I also made the actual melody into a synth. Check it out. So there you go. I wanted to add some texture and some flavor to the melody here, but I also decided to add some horns to accent the melody. I feel like a lot of Citypop, 90s anime has that sort of like horn section that's in there, so I really wanted to include that. And then if we let this play, we'll get into the verse here. Nice piano slide there. The horns are going to accent part of the melody in the synth here. And then here is the bumper. There it is. So what's really cool is that I started with the Anatase motif, the Anatase melody, right? The ba-da-da-da-da-ba-ba. And then from there, the rest of the melody doesn't necessarily spell out anything using the letters to notes methodology. It doesn't spell any kind of words. I could have taken that approach and take different words of things that Anna themselves is into or interested in, but I decided to just sort of riff off of the main melody there, and that's kind of where the creativity kind of happens with using this methodology. You sort of have this bass melody to work with, and then you kind of just go from there. So one more time to kind of listen to the melody here in the verse. We're just kind of vibing. I kind of use the motif a handful of times throughout the verse here, so A little piano increase there. And here's the ba 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 da. Especially that. It's very catchy, but again, it doesn't necessarily spell anything, but it's cool to have sort of the bass Anatase motif to work with and then just take your creativity from there. Now, when we think about city pop, there's a lot of layers that are involved in this genre. You know, you've got sort of like the dancey beat of the drums. There's a lot of like hand percussion and auxiliary percussion. There's a funky bass line, bass groove. A lot of the guitars are often doing sort of like a palm muted riff. So we'll get to all these layers in just a second here. But let's start with the drums and percussion. So if we solo the drums here, actually let's make sure we get the piano and the melody as well. We'll keep these two in here as well. So here are the drums. And it's just a simple 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 with the melody there. And so the reason why I decided to keep the drums pretty simple is because when I added the hand percussion, I wanted the bongos and congas to actually be the ones doing more of the rhythmic rhythms, but more of like the syncopated patterns and stuff. So check it out here at the verse. Actually, let's go from the beginning. So even the hand percussion still has like a steady beat, but it kind of is accenting different parts of the measures to add some flavor. And then we also have some shakers, like some egg shakers just in the back, just to add that texture. Ba, 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 da. There's the stinger. Now let's add the bass into this. And basically the bass is just grooving. It's just holding out these couple notes, and then there's a cool bass lick to lead into the verse, since we sort of have that space where that piano descent is, that little piano slide. There's also a bass lick that's going to happen there that does a funky little bass lick. Check it out. Yeah, I love it. And the bass is just kind of grooving. Do some cool like octave stuff there, but it just kind of follows along with the chords. Yeah, that's a bass part. And then when we get to this palm muted guitar riff, let me solo that just by itself. I decided to just have the riff do the same thing over and over again. So it's just basically shaping around an A major scale. It's really just mostly using the notes like A, F sharp, E, and like B, C sharp kind of goes up there. So this is what it sounds like. And it just does that over and over again. And then with the chords. And then at the very end here, I had the palm muted guitar also play the Anatase melody here. Very cute. But then when you add it all together, this is what it all sounds like. Ooh, the bass and the piano slide there. You have the horns accenting the melody here. It's a very cool jam. I'm very proud of it. I love how it turned out. Nice, and it just ends on that A there. One thing that's really interesting too is that I added some strings to the song here. Just some light strings, chords kind of happening in the background. The top string kind of does a little bit of a slow counter melody. Ba, 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 ba. Should have pulled it up there so you could see it. So yeah, just some simple, nice, lovely strings that are going on in the background. But what's really interesting about the strings is that it really fills in the sound. When you don't have the strings in here, I'm going to play from the verse. I'm going to start with the strings in the song. I'm going to remove it, and you're going to hear just like this emptiness. Like you don't really hear the strings too much itself, but when they're removed from the full track, it really makes a difference. So check it out. So strings are in. and now they're gone. Hopefully this comes through in the video, but it has this emptiness to it. So now we're gonna add the strings in right now. Now it's like, it just has this sort of atmosphere that it fills in. One last thing I wanted to mention is that the Anatase motif is really cool because it ends on an E, because it ends on like the 5th of the A major scale, it sort of acts like this intro. Like that's the Anatase motif right there. So it's a cool little intro, and then we add that little bass lick. So it's kind of like its own little intro stinger, but by adding the little motif at the end here, we kind of make it more of a conclusive fullness of a like a bumper or a stinger. So if we hear this right here, so Anna has a version of her theme that's just those couple seconds, so they can use it as like an intro to their YouTube videos, or it's just like a stinger in maybe like a transition between scenes on their streams. But it's very, very cool to utilize a melody like this where the melody ends on a note that's not as like resolute, or at least we are ending on sort of the 5 chord here. But so it gives us room to play with the melody a bit and extend it to make it conclusive while still being its own thing so that it can be an intro. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. That being the intro, and then this being the outro. Yeah, it's cool. It ended up being very versatile like that. So after I showed Anna the 30-second version of the song, they were absolutely in love with what I created. They said, "Oh my gosh, I've been sitting here in awe for a solid few minutes trying to come up with words. I'm still struggling to put them together. I'm actually dumbfounded by how quickly you've done this and how spot on it is to what I had envisioned already." And I'm so happy that Anna absolutely loved the song that I created for them. So Anna actually enjoyed the song so much that they wanted to extend the song and have a 1-minute version alongside the 30-second version. So what I decided to do here was repeat the riff in the verse here. And we kind of have this going on a loop, but I decided to add a guitar solo to this. So let's go from the bumper and check this out here. Yeah! Can't have a fun city pop song without a fun solo here. Do a lot of just like repeating motifs here. Some cool like pentatonic scale action. Going crazy up on the scale here. I had so much fun making this solo. It was a lot of fun. And now the song actually loops back into itself too. There you go. So Anna wanted a version of the song that can loop for them to play it on their streams, whether it's a starting soon or a be right back screen. But now that they have a version that can loop, they can utilize it in multiple different ways like that. One last thing I want to talk about here is that in order to make this loop, I actually had to change the chord progression of how the original 30-second version ended. So the 30-second version ended on an A major, which is the key of the song. So I had this nice conclusive ending here. It's all done, completed, right? But for the looped version, I decided to change the chord to end on a D, which is the 4th of the key that we're in, just to kind of give it more of that movement. Like the song's not done yet, we're going back into the verse, and the guitar solo is starting here. So right here, yeah. So it's pretty cool. It just adds this extra texture so you can progress the song further without having to end on the A. I guess I could have also still ended on the A and did some kind of other transition, but this felt pretty natural to me where it's like, all right, instead of ending on the root of the chord of this key, let's just keep it going by going into the verse chords immediately. And we kind of do it on the upbeat. You can see here on the blocks here, it actually ends on like the and of 4 going into it. So it's like bum 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 ba da, which kind of lines up with the melody here. If I can control this right, here you go. Check this out. Bum. Yeah. But yeah, there you have it. I wanted to share my experience with how I create music for other content creators. I've done a bunch of other ones like chiptune rock and spooky horror and like vampire, like creepy vampire music and electro pop. So if you're interested in having your own personalized theme song to enhance your audio branding for your streams or videos, click the link in the description below, and I would love to help bring your ideas to life. And also, if you found the letters to notes methodology to be really interesting, I do plan on making more videos talking about the methodology and showcasing how it works. But you can click here to check out how I turned the characters from Epic the Musical into jingles using that methodology. Thanks for watching.